Hello, folks. Welcome to Between Awesome and Disaster. This is your host, Will Carey. I appreciate you guys listening. I'm glad you're here, and I hope wherever you are in this world, you are doing well, and those closest to you are hanging in as well. There's a lot that I'm excited about for today's show. Not even before we even get into my guest for today. We'll get to that in a second. But I'm recording this. I am recording this monologue at the beginning of September, which is crazy to think that we are in fall already. But I'm recording this a week before I get legally married to my fiance, Chelsea Connor. So by the time you're listening to this, we will be legally married, given all of the obstacles thrown in our way by the state of New York City, the coronavirus, our original venue shutting down. Tons of obstacles have been thrown in our way, and I do apologize for being a little self-indulgent here up top, but I am so incredibly happy to now. Well, you will be hearing from future Will, but I as I am recording this, I'm so incredibly excited that I am finally going to be a married man, and as you're listening to this, that it has happened. I'm incredibly thankful and happy for the partner that I have. My fiancée Chelsea is an incredible woman, and I am really fortunate to have her in my life. Of all the things that haven't gone right for me, this is, or things that I've gotten wrong, this is one thing that I've gotten really right, and I'm really happy. I'm really happy it's happening, and I know that I will be when you are listening to this. So, thank you, Chelsea. I love you very much. Sentimentality aside, there's a lot of stuff related to today's show that I'm excited to share with you. My guest on the show today is Will Pugh. Will is probably most well known for being the lead singer and the frontman of the pop punk band Cartel, who I've been a big fan of since their first album, Chroma, back in the early 2000s. And actually, when I was first attending college at Towson University, one of the first shows that I drove to Washington, D.C. to go see, and we talk about this in the episode as well, was Cartel opening for Gatsby's American Dream, Copeland, and the Starting Line. So that was the first time I was exposed to their music. So I'm really excited to get to share this with you. And given that Will has a lot of extensive experience in recording music and music production, I'm really excited to get to hear some of his thoughts on that process of making music as well. I'll let you guys know there are a couple times in this episode you'll hear a couple of technical glitches. I've mostly worked around them, but there are a couple of little dips in the audio quality on occasion. So I do apologize for those, but this is a really exciting episode that I can't wait to share with you guys. If you are listening to this show for the first time because you're a fan of Will or Cartel, I really appreciate you taking time out of your day to listen to my show, and thanks for being here. If you want to check out other episodes, I've got over nearly 170 something episodes available for you to check out wherever you get your podcasts, and feel free to give me a holler on social media. I'm at Comic Will Carey on Twitter, and I am at Will Carey 23 on Instagram. So thank you guys again for being here, and let's go to my chat with Will Pugh from Cartel. I'm excited to talk to you today, man. Not only do because I always giggle a little bit when I talk to someone that has the same name as me, but dude, I remember like when I first started going to college, I went to Towson University outside of Baltimore, and like when I could finally have my car on campus, my friend and I were so excited to start like driving into DC for shows. And I think one of the first things that I like went and saw was at the 930 Club. I believe it was Cartel, and then if I remember correctly, I think it was Gatsby's American Dream, Copeland, and the
Mm.
Starting Line were headlining. I don't know if you remember that tour or not.
Oh, I vividly, yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, it
and
was a great tour.
I remember it being a great show. I think this might have been before like Honestly had really hit. So I remember just kind of seeing you guys go up first and going, "Holy cow, that song's amazing! That this band is amazing." Was that like one of your first like big the band's like first big tours back in the day?
Yeah, it was actually our very first big tour. That was spring of '06. Um yeah, so Chroma came out September '05.
Mm-hmm.
So we were like, just starting people it was just kind of starting to take off a little bit. We had already signed to Epic, but I don't think it had been like announced yet.
Mm-hmm.
Because Epic would re-release Chroma like in June of '06, which is when like all the radio stuff started happening.
Right.
Um, so yeah, that was catching us like fully on the upswing before like anyone had even known anything about us. So that tour was a lot of fun. I mean, that was the first time we were playing a lot of the bigger venues that we would like continue to play from there on out. And, a lot
Mm-hmm.
of places that we had heard of before, like the 930 Club. I mean, that, anybody who's like a fan of the underground of any genre will know the 930 Club, just as like a thing like CBGB's was.
Yeah. Or the Black
Um,
Cat in DC
it
is
just had
another famous one.
Yeah, that one too. Yeah, I mean, I feel like Black Cat was a lot more like, and correct me if I'm wrong, that was a lot more like punk rock versus like 930 Club kind of like took everything. Or
Yeah,
am I completely wrong
yeah,
about
Black Cat.
that?
My experience of the Black Cat is that's more of like you're right, more of the more hardcore punk. Whereas I think 930 would play like pop punk, punk rock. I think the Backstreet Boys on a comeback tour did the
Right.
930 clubs.
Ex
Yeah,
exactly. It was kind of like the spot where your parents didn't feel weird dropping you off there.
right.
Uh, that's that sort of venue. Yeah. We had those in Atlanta too, but yeah, so I mean, on that tour, getting to see all these places that we'd heard of, and like that we'd drive by when we were going to play, like the closets of the venues that we were playing before that tour. We had just gotten our booking agent at the time, who also booked Starting Line, which is kind of how that all went down.
Hmm.
Um, and we it was a 5 band bill, but so we were two of five. But technically, like the one of four that was like doing the whole tour, because I think they had like two other bands or three other bands that were actually opening, but
Hmm.
like just did regional slots. So we never had any locals, obviously, but it was just sort of like, oh, okay, like the band before us, you would get to know. Typically on tour, you get to know the bands that play before you and play after you. You get to know really well because you have to kind of work together to get the show moving.
Right.
And you typically hang out like you're either done or you're just starting around the same time, so you get like 5 minutes just to kind of shoot the shit with these guys. And so we'd always have these bands in front of us playing. We'd be like, okay, cool, like this is awesome, get to know you guys. And then they leave after 2 weeks, and you're like, all right, new people, this is weird. And it's like it was our first kind of like being in the army, because those tours are so like there's if 50 people show up, you're ecstatic.
Hmm.
Most of the time like 10 or 15 people show up, and you're like, okay, cool, right on. And
Uh
then
huh.
once or twice a tour you get like 100 or 200 people, and you feel like a rock star. You're like, oh my god, this is crazy.
Uh huh.
So a lot of times with those other bands, it's kind of like, cool, we all made like $100 tonight, and like we sold a couple t-shirts. Do you guys want to go like find a Walmart parking lot and like circle our wagons and hang out, since we can't afford a hotel? Like
Uh huh.
we had to deal with a lot of that stuff. So all the bands prior to that, we really felt like they ended up being like brothers, because we were on tour for like 4 or 5 weeks, and we all. A thing. So when we got onto the Starting Line tour, it was like, oh, okay, right on. Like this is what it's like not to struggle. This is tight. Um, I think we were getting paid like $250 a night or something like that, maybe. So it's not a lot, but we were, there's 1,000 people at every show. So, we could sell some merch. So, we were sitting there like high cotton, like this is awesome. Like we're killing it. And Starting Line, man, I swear, like to this day, like Starting Line and Newfound Glory. We toured Starting Line on that tour, and then Newfound Glory was in the fall. And both of those bands, with Warped Tour sandwiched in the middle, both of those bands really taught us like how to be a band. Newfound Glory was like the one that we like had fallen in love with, like like when I was like 15 and I first heard like Nothing Gold Can Stay and like Hit or Miss, and I was like, oh yeah, this is my band.
Yeah.
And like went and saw them play for 5 years before I ever like even played a show with them. So it's just kind of like, this is weird. So they had a little bit more of that, like they still felt like you were hanging out with people that you shouldn't be hanging out with. Like you don't deserve to be there. But Starting Line, like, because I guess by the time we had started really trying to be a band, they kind of blew up around that time. So we sort of missed that wave of like, everybody's a fan of the Starting Line. Of course we heard Best of Me, duh. But like, like we missed that thing. So when we got the tour with them, we're like, oh cool, their band rips, that's cool. Like let's hang out. So we didn't have that like mystique with them. But they like really took us, under their wing, and their tour manager like taught our tour manager like everything he knew about like how to be a headliner, and like they were super cool to all the bands and never pulled any like dick moves. Like if there were only 2 dressing rooms, they wouldn't be like, we're gonna take one and then all of you are gonna split another one. They'd be like, hey, like let's just all hang out because this isn't cool. Like this is a small venue, so like we'll hang out on the bus because we don't have to be in here, so you guys can take these dressing rooms. And just little stuff like that, where you always felt like they were the headliners, they were the big money, they made the decisions, all that sort of stuff. But they always made you feel like welcome. And I would call any of those dudes like real good buds, like to this day. And they're just sweet people in general, like good humans, aside from everything else. So once we kind of like got that vibe from them, it's like, oh, okay, now we know how to like be headliners. And then, you see Newfound Glory, and they're like, been through everything you could possibly be through as a band, and still really cool, like definitely like great people and all that, but they run a really tight ship, and everybody in their crew and everybody runs a really tight ship. So we're like, all right, this is how you do that part of it too. And like, not Starting Line certainly did, it was just a different sort of thing,
yeah, it's kind of like different levels. So they kind of taught you like the how to be a cool good person to those that you tour with, and then also the production side of it also, it sounds like.
Yeah, just kind of like, because on Newfound Glory tour we were all in a bus. That was our second Warped Tour we did in the bus, just so we didn't break up, because Warped Tour is very hard. And then on Newfound Glory, it was us opening early November, direct support, and then Newfound Glory. So that was kind of like, everybody's in a bus, everybody's got crew, that sort of thing. So it's like seeing how it works when you have to be like very like tightly, regimented with your schedule, and like everybody's kind of got to be working as one and getting stuff done because everybody's got a lot more stuff to get on and off stage. How to do that while still also like making people feel welcome and like feel like you're not just like, opening for Bon Jovi and, like you never see the band until like they're on stage, and then you never talk to them afterwards, even though you're on the same bill, like that sort of thing. And I just picked a random name, not saying Bon Jovi's like that, just,
oh
like
yeah, no,
rock god sort of thing.
Yeah, that makes total sense to me. It's almost, it's like the difference from going from like, kind of you think of these bands and people that you've been admiring from afar from years, and now you're like working with them. It's a difference between like they're these you view them as these exalted figures with like glowing auras, and then you're just like, oh, they're just cool, down to earth people. I found like punk and punk rock people are generally like the most like chill, awesome dudes and dudettes that I've encountered, and also in doing this show. Newfound Glory still, they were one of my Newfound Glory were one of like the last shows I saw before the lockdown hit. I saw them at the PlayStation Theater with the early November, and they still put on just such a great show. Yeah, they were for me early on. They were really big for me also. And they were the first, like my first introduction to what I'd eventually learn to be like hardcore.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I kind of went the opposite direction. Like all my friends were into like hardcore, and then when they all found out that Chad from Shai Hulud had a pop band, they were like, "Dude, let's check this out. It's like pop rock, but they've got breakdowns." It's like, what? It's like, yeah, it's like hardcore, but like all major scales. All right, this is interesting. Let's check this out. And it was like, oh my God, like I love this, because my first adventures into music was, based off my mom's musical taste, which was, like basically any like 80s, early 90s soft rock. Like,
okay.
Hello. Like, like
Peter
Christopher
Gabriel, Cross,
like that sort of stuff. Like, basically anything that sounds like Genesis. So Genesis, Chicago, Journey, like Foreigner, that was a little earlier. But, all that stuff. I'm just like, raised on that basically. So once I got to high school and like met, like the kids that were wearing like, like I guess at that time this is what was underground, but now it sounds kind of weird. But the kids that were wearing like Jinkos and chain wallets, like you're like, who are these kids? Like that's not who I'm, but like they look cool and they're into music and I'm really into music. I play guitar, and then they're like, dude, have you even heard of Earth Crisis? No.
I didn't know about Earth Crisis till last year.
Chokehold and Shai Hulud and One King Down and like all these things. You're like, damn. Oh, there you go. Yeah, that's like wading deep into the waters. When you go like, and I mean no offense to anyone by this, to each their own entirely. But like when you wade into the waters of vegan straight edge hardcore, you are at the very end of the line. Like that's as far as it goes.
Yeah, that's where the sidewalk ends.
like I remember the first song I learned the words for Earth Crisis. The opening salvo was "Destroy the machines that kill the forests that disfigure the earth." That was the opening lyric of the first song I ever learned by Earth Crisis. I'm like, okay, all right, okay, here we go. All right, cool. Nice. So kind of like got into that, and then when Newfound Glory sort of surfaced out of effects and Melancholy, like all the other like kind of straight down the line, punk stuff. We always knew that, but and I guess that would like trend poppier. Certainly not like pop punk. Blink 182, I guess, was the beacon there. But then when Newfound Glory did it, it's like, oh, I like moshing. So when you have like some of these breakdowns and stuff, you're like, oh shit, like, but it's poppy and you can sing. It's like, I can't scream to save my life, but I can sing. So it really like shows the first time. You're like, oh, I didn't know what it was like beforehand, but now I do. And it's like, I could have never have explained it beforehand, it's sort of that situation with Newfound Glory where you're like, okay, all right. It just opens your eyes to a whole new world. And so, I mean, they'll all, they're buds of mine, like Chad invited me to his wedding. You know what I mean? Like it's such a crazy thing to tell like 15-year-old girl, like, hey man, by the time you're 36, you're gonna be friends with Newfound Glory and like work with them in the studio. And you're just like, what? Like, no, I'm not. You're crazy. Like that's how I would feel about it. So yeah, it's still surreal to me.
That's awesome. I did not think Earth Crisis was going to come up in this conversation, so I'm just
neither did I.
I'm loving this. Well, yeah. Well, you need like I think it's really important for like you need like I guess the comparison would be like you need like the cool older brother kind of band, and I always thought Newfound Glory were that for me when it comes to hardcore or even like Blink. Like I would have never found out who the Descendants were if Mark Hoppus didn't say, oh well, the first punk rock song I heard was Silly Girl. And almost like before you get to like drinking coffee, like pour over like black single origin coffee, you need like some cream and sugar, maybe a little whipped cream, and to before you get to like the hard stuff. And so I guess I'm curious. So it seems like you and a lot of your friends like started with heavier music and then moved into more melodic stuff. I was curious like what this scene that Cartel and you came from, because when I think of Atlanta, like I know Florida has a big punk scene, but when I think of Atlanta, I just know the hip hop scene, and I'm curious like what the scene for rock and punk was in Atlanta when you were growing up.
It was smaller. So the venue that like everybody played early on was a place called Under the Couch, which was on Georgia Tech campus. It was actually like a coffee shop by day, like a student run, like, you know, one of those sort of things. Mm-hmm. And by night they would turn it into, you know, a little venue. And, you know, I'm sure 98% of the time there was, you know, some singer songwriter sort of thing, you know, acoustic guitar, real soft, just kind of chill, and people just kind of, you know, meandering about. But as hardcore kids, as all hardcore kids know, they're very resourceful for being able to put on shows.
Totally. Hardcore kids will put a show on anywhere.
Yeah, it's tough. Like they're just like, you know, whatever. Like you give us a parking lot and an extension cord, we'll make this shit happen. You know, like
yeah, totally. Just don't trip over it or the show's over.
Exactly. Just don't do that, and don't plug too many things into it. Like I'll plug this microphone right into that guitar amp and scream through it. I don't care. Don't need a PA. Big deal. Or I'll just like get in your face and scream right in front of you. You know, like
right,
okay,
yeah.
Sure. So yeah, so for Atlanta, like that became like the place that would like let everybody play shows, and like they didn't, you know, there was no like, oh, that's too heavy or whatever, you know, none of that. It was just kind of like, yeah, sure, like we'll open it, and, you know, $50, whatever, you know, like just made it really, really simple for everybody. So, you know, the very first show I ever saw in the scene, Newfound Glory, Saves the Day, and Piebald, in that order. Piebald was headlining
nice.
At Under the Couch. If you put 200 people in Under the Couch, like there's going to be a problem. Like someone's going to like die. Like there's a fire, everyone is dying if there's 200 people in that place.
Right.
So like, being able to, you know, have hardcore shows there and punk rock shows, like, you know, my band played shows there like before Cartel, like just little local stuff. We'd play shows there and do all that. That was kind of our little surrounding. And then once, you know, this whole thing took off, where like, you know, Green Day and Blink-182 and Newfound Glory and Jimmy World and all these bands are sort of starting to blow up on, you know, mainstream. It really, you know, kicked everything into high gear for all the other venues. They'd be like, oh, you know, you're like in the same vein as this band. Cool. Like you want to open up this show. So it really sort of blossomed from there, but like, you know, it really kind of came out of these pockets that, yeah. So basically, you know, there's 4 cities that we all just sort of like used to hang out. We're all friends, all like pop punk kids and stuff, and hardcore kids. Going to high school, once we graduated and went to college, it sort of, everybody sort of moved into town, and then the scene sort of started to grow from there. Cause I think a lot of these people, you know, would either start like being in bands and like kind of doing our own thing versus like going to shows of other bands. And, you know, Cartel was like one of those bands, that sort of, you know, fell in line there with all the other stuff that was happening in Atlanta.
Gotcha. So these other bands kind of hit, and then the other venues are like, oh, we can do this, we can program this kind of stuff as well.
Yeah, because he didn't have like the legacy of like, you know, punk or even underground music, you know, like the bigger like East Coast cities would have, or LA or anything like that, where they're just like, yeah, this makes sense. You know, in Atlanta, they're like, now what now? You know, like you had big venues for, you know, the major rock bands and all that sort of thing. Like there was definitely a scene for that. But as far as like the underground stuff, there never really was like a local presence of that sort of thing. So there never really was a national representation. I think, you know, like what we had, Collective Soul was from Atlanta.
Yeah, and then you had like the Athens indie
rock
bands, college rock bands.
Athens was a totally different story. You know, like anybody can get a show in Athens. Like it was, yeah, you can just go, just pull a guitar up and just say, hey, y'all got a spot? I'm like, yeah, sure, fuck it, go up there. It's like Athens is very, very hospitable. Atlanta was always like the tough, egg to crack. So, yeah, that was kind of the evolution, I guess, of the Atlanta scene. But then, like behind us, you had like, Manchester Orchestra
Mm-hmm.
and like Oh Brother. Um, yeah, I mean, that was their own thing. And like Seven Dust was its own, like,
Oh yeah.
branch of the tree somewhere over there.
Uh-huh. Yeah,
Um,
totally.
yeah, but then, obviously like hip hop just dominates. So
Right.
that's most of what Atlanta gets known for. So it's kind of, I don't haven't lived in Atlanta in like almost a decade, so it's hard to know exactly what's going on there now.
Sure.
Um, but yeah, it's always interesting to me how that sort of works out, in places like the South where, rock isn't necessarily like the first thing that comes to mind.
Yeah, or even like specifically the kind of like rock that you do. But I imagine that could be kind of freeing in some way, because when I was talking to Jared from Bowling for Soup, and like there's not much that you would describe as a punk or a pop punk scene in Texas, but you're really kind of they were just kind of really doing their own thing, and I wonder if it was a similar thing for you.
Yeah, I mean, once we were able to sort of get out of the local band like scene,
Mm-hmm.
and started touring around, like everything just started opening up for us. I mean, I think it was kind of funny, but I mean, we were much bigger in other places, than we were in Atlanta. And so, I mean, I think by the time that we, kind of like, I guess, quote unquote, like made it, or, at least,
Uh-huh.
got to some sort of like national level, that's when we actually started getting bigger in Atlanta. And like people were figuring out, I didn't even know you guys are from here. I'm like, well, it's because that, there's not really like a local scene to sort of like, jump off of, where it's like, New Jersey or something like that. You want to
Yeah.
start a pop punk band, there's like hundreds of bands that you can network through.
That's interesting to me as well, because I feel like other major cities are probably like that, are probably similar. It's like you got to go you got to go earn your respect and make your bones other places before where you're from will respect you. That's kind of interesting dynamic, I find, when it comes to like cities and their homegrown artists.
And sometimes you just need to really like round your whatever that inclination is. You have to like round it into form by leaving the place that you're the most comfortable with. It just seems like, once, for me, being in southern, I guess, you're driving around the first time I drove there, and the way you got there was from playing shows. Like I remember got to we first got to California on the first tour, and I'd never been to California before, so like literally the first time ever being in California was on tour. And
Mm-hmm.
then got to, we basically drove straight to Huntington Beach. We were going to be staying with the guy who owned our label. We were going to stay in his apartment, just like crash on his floor. And we happened to like roll into town at like 5:30 in the morning. So we like got the beach in Huntington Beach, and it was just like this. It's like, and I don't really think about it much. Like that's probably the first time I thought about that moment in time, and maybe even since it happened. But just like that sort of that sort of thing impresses you in a way that like changes fundamentally how you are going to pursue music or even your life from then on. Yep. Kind of and yeah, that's kind of like, I guess that all leads back into, going back to your hometown, and then your band sort of getting bigger from that sort of experience. Just like, oh yeah, man, they were just playing in LA like last night. Like, what? They played in LA? Like, nobody needs to know that we played to like, the other bands basically. No one. And so people give a shit all of a sudden wherever you're from.
Yeah, exactly. It's just actually having the show somewhere else is enough of a is the feat in itself.
Hmm.
And I and so you get signed to Capitol. Chroma gets re-released, and
Epic,
it's
epic.
oh,
Sorry.
Epic. Sorry, sorry. Um,
Yeah.
so you get signed to Epic. Chroma starts becoming building momentum and becoming this like thing with this big song. And did you guys like tour internationally? Like how what was that? That must have been a crazy time.
Yeah, and see, we actually went on our first Japanese tour in November of '05. Yeah, so the first place that we went overseas there, like here's the deep end, guys, figure it out.
Oh, that's awesome.
Um, because it's different. You go to the UK, you're like, oh, okay, yeah, but it's they drive on the other side of the road, all right, whatever, like
Mm-hmm.
it's not a lot to get used to. But when the first time you land from flying out of your country, you land into a place where like literally you don't understand a thing that's going on
Uh huh.
is the most humbling thing that could ever happen to you. You're like, I don't know anything about what's going on. I don't even know what this food is called because like Americans have completely ruined Japanese. Like I like sushi.
Right.
Where's California? Japan is like, no, that's not how any of this works. And you're like, shit, okay. Um, but it's the best place. I love Japan so much. So probably because it was my first, but it's also just like such a cool experience. So yeah, spring. No, actually, it's out. We go and do Japan. We come back. And kind of just went from there. I think we did the UK like later that year. But that
Mm-hmm.
was really the only international tour we did besides Australia. So we had done Australia, we had done UK and Japan. That's basically it. We never played Europe.
Oh, really? That's interesting. Well, if there's I think if there's any place to play internationally, early on, Japan is. I've been there a couple times and I just love it there so much. Like the bands that are coming out of like Japan right now, I've gotten like really into deep diving into that music scene over the last few years. There's just so much really cool, interesting stuff happening over there.
Yeah, it's a good spot, man. They love music, uh, especially like loud guitar music.
Yeah.
um, and yeah, we just met some of the coolest people there. And like one of the bands we played with the first time we went. Um, like I still listen to their stuff from time to time, and it's just like I mean, they were banned for like 5 minutes basically,
Uh huh.
um, but it's still like some of the coolest stuff. You're just like, damn, like everything over there is like you either bring it or you don't.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Nobody wastes their time, it seems. So yeah, it's such a cool place and like nice people and great food, and then the history obviously is just like when you're standing in a city that's you know 4 times as old as your country is. You're like,
Uh huh.
oh, like, and that's not even like one of the old ones. You know what I mean? Um,
Mm-hmm.
that's some crazy shit. Like I remember we went to some temple. I forget the name of the city. It was outside Tokyo. We went to a temple there, and we're looking at like when it was built, and I was like, dudes, it's like Rome didn't exist yet, my man. Like this thing
Yeah.
was built before Rome was even an idea. Like think about that. They're like, what? I'm like, yeah, like that shit's crazy. Like I think they have some architecture over there that's like older than the pyramids. It's
Uh
just
huh.
like mind blowing.
Oh, that yeah. I remember having that experience like the first time I was over there as well. It gives you an amazing sense of, I guess, perspective about your place in the timeline
Hmm.
of history. But yeah, it was absolutely like a transcendent experience the first time I'm over there, and then to compare like the hyper like futuristic feel of parts of Tokyo with like these hundred like with these ancient cities
Hmm.
is it's jaw dropping, man. I
Yeah.
yeah, my goal is to play Japan doing music. I've done comedy in Japan, but I haven't done music over there.
Dude, how does comedy in Japan work? Because like I felt like I landed some pretty solid jokes on stage
Uh-huh.
and like got nothing. You know what I mean? Like, I was like, oh shit, did I like offend somebody like really badly? And they're like, no, they just like your humor is different than our humor. It's like, okay, but it was funny though, right? They're like, yeah, it was American funny. I'm like, damn it, you know?
Exactly, American funny. Basically, I was fortunate enough in that the show I did was mostly English speaking, so I just kind of played to like broad human experiences, and being coming from America, I think I was there in like early. I'm thinking back now. Okay, so I was there in like April of 2016, so this is right before everything like fell to pieces. So I
Mm-hmm.
was able to kind of do some like broad like oh, America's crazy kind of stuff. But then
Yeah,
I'm also really
and then
tall,
it
so I
turned
could
into reality.
exactly. I also whenever I do international shows, I try to always talk about like I bring out all my jokes about being tall and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, dude, if you're tall in Japan, you are like a giant.
Yeah, I remember being on the JR line of the subway and seeing like two like elderly women like sneaking a picture of me on the subway. I wish I had had the cognizance to have gone like and grabbed that selfie, because that would have been the greatest selfie ever. Um,
Oh, the ultimate selfie. Yeah.
yeah. I was also curious because I also know that you and your bandmates famously did live in New York City for a period of time.
Uh-huh.
Um, I was curious about your experience when you're doing the follow up to Chroma, the self titled, while doing the MTV show, and specifically doing something that I find can be specifically doing something as laborious and detailed oriented as recording and writing songs in an album. How did doing that on a reality show affect or influence the writing process for that album?
It really did, man. Like that. Without diving like way down the barrel of corporate America and music labels and like all these things, like what in I guess TV too, like intersecting, which
Mm-hmm.
is pretty much where we were. Without diving like crazy into it, if anybody is really honest about any situation like that, there's no way that someone who's been writing songs since I was, 12,
Mm-hmm.
um, somehow stops writing songs between the time that they record their first record and record their second one. you know,
Sure,
um,
because you have the
that
skills in place.
sorry.
Because you have like the skills and the craftsmanship of it in place by that time.
Yeah, but I mean, just like like I wrote a new song like while we were recording Chroma. You know what I mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
just because you're just messing around with stuff, you're like, oh, that's cool. Like don't forget that, and then like that ends up being like a song, that's on the self-titled records. I mean, songwriters never stop writing.
Right.
So like it was a huge like what the fuck moment for me when we found out that it was like being billed that we were going to write and record the album in 20 days.
Uh huh.
Like recording the album's nothing when we recorded and mixed Chroma in 21 days. And
Mm-hmm.
so like, it's like, you just want us to record it in 20 days? Big deal. We got this, like we play music 300 days a year. Like we are well practiced. We can do this. And so when I found out that they were billing it, like we were only going to be like, we were going to write the stuff in there too. It's like, no one believes that. Like that's idiotic. Like
Mm-hmm.
I, this record has been written for like 6 months. Like what are you talking about? Like I did all the demos on Warped Tour '06. You
Uh
know what I
huh.
mean? Like, and so it's just a bunch of, it's just kind of like, it was nice just because you kind of get to see behind the curtain. just to know when you see other stuff like that, you can give bands or like whoever the artist is, or whatever, you can give them a break, because you're like, yeah, you know what, like there's no way that's real, and they're just making them look like idiots. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so that's as much as I can really say about that without going way down the barrel. But
Oh yeah,
um,
I
the
know what you
actual,
mean.
yeah, the actual experience itself, like being there and recording and doing things like that, like it was honestly like really cool, because it sort of, you don't have all the usual trappings of um a typical studio experience, or even like the comfort of, like, if you aren't getting an idea, just being able to go like, you know what, screw it, I'm just going to go home, let's call it, and we'll like come back again tomorrow and reattack it. It's like, nope, you live here, dude. And
Right.
you know, you're in the kitchen, like making some food, and you're looking over at the control room door, just like, son of a bitch. Like it never, like the idea never gets out of your head. So you just like are forced to sit there and work on it. And you also don't have like a bunch of time, like you got to get it done. That was kind of the other thing, just as a side note on the previous point I was making.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody who is tasked with writing and recording an album in 20 days doesn't put 15 fucking songs on the album. That's all I gotta say.
Yeah, yeah. You figure it would be like 10
10,
songs,
yeah,
or like,
10 max.
yeah, like
Yeah,
what's the difference between an album and an EP? Okay, 33 minutes versus 29. All right, we'll do 30. We'll do
exactly.
32. Yeah, yeah.
We
I
might do 32:59. Like,
exactly. Like, what does the contract say we've got to bring? Okay, we'll give you exactly that.
yeah, we'll
Um,
just make sure we hold out that last like diamond chord, just like for an extra like couple seconds, just to make sure it crosses the threshold.
Yeah, totally. Let's
Yeah,
let's do the chorus a few more times and then fade out instead of just ending all at
exactly.
once. Yeah, that I
Tag it, boys.
yeah, that makes sense to the way you phrase it like that, because I think, and I remember being kind of a little more naive about some of that stuff when I was younger, but I guess I had always thought, well, there's no way, if they were actually like had zero ideas, went in, and then I don't know if anyone would want to listen to like zero ideas. You need at least a little bit of build up before you actually go in and start actually recording and making the thing.
Yeah, like you need to write a couple really not good songs and then bail. Like
Uh
it's
huh.
like, all right, cool, like got the back in action, cool, let's go. um yeah, I mean, it just takes time. I mean, could it be done? Yeah, sure, you can write and record an album in 20 days, absolutely. Is it going to be any good? Hell no. Like, and on top of that, it's like, you listen to the songs we had on the album, like we had this a freaking orchestra, man. Like,
Yeah.
Wasted literally doesn't have, and nobody played on it but me. Like
Right. Right.
the drums were a marching band, from a local high school. Like, what? Like, who thought this would be a good idea? Basically, it just like comes back around to like, somebody trying to sell it, more like, oh, we'll get more people to tune in if we like add the drama of,
Yeah.
then
Of
now they've
course.
got like, now it's like a game almost. I'm like, what? Like, there's no like the, the, there's no prize, for getting it done. There's no like punishment for not getting it done. What the label just like not gonna let us go in the studio and finish it afterwards? Like, what do you really think that they're gonna invest millions of dollars in a band and like that's it? Cool,
Uh
like
huh.
social experiment over. Like, it's the dumbest marketing thing I've ever seen, and I've seen some dumb marketing stuff, and that takes the cake. So whoever has that, if anybody wants to go do some like, monster.com history diving and see who was the marketing person in charge of that,
Mm-hmm.
do not hire them. They have bad ideas, especially when they don't tell the band. Like this is hilarious. It's actually a really good industry story.
Okay.
Um, and I've told it before, so if anybody's listening to this, who's listening to other interviews that I might have told the story before, you'll already know it's coming. But I was like about 10 days before we were actually going into the bubble, we were playing like a little radio show in Greenville, South Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
And right after sound check, I had an interview with People Magazine. And I'm like, damn, People Magazine, you know, the promo guy at Epic who like handled all the press, was like, yeah, no, man, it's just like one of those little like sidebar things, you know, it's like not a full like page spread or all this other crazy stuff. So don't freak out. Like it'll be a really easy interview. I'm like, tight, cool. Um, he's like, yeah, they're just looking for like, you know, little quote blurbs from the band. I was like, yeah, right on.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the niceties are exchanged, whatever. And then the interviewer, she was like, so what's it gonna be like to write and record an album in 20 days? And I like take a second and I'm like, what are you talking about? Like we've already recorded like half the album. Click, line goes dead. And I'm like, all right, I guess we just got cut off.
Right.
You know, within like 10 seconds, my phone blows up. It's my manager. Holy shit, dude, did you not get the memo? What memo? Oh, did they not copy you on the email? What email? Have you checked your email in the last hour? No, I was sound checking.
Right.
Oh man. And then so he's like, just hang tight, somebody's gonna call you. And then the press guy and my manager call me like on conference and they're like, hey man, so none of this was our idea. They just sprung it on us at the last minute. And it just so happened to be very bad timing that you were doing this interview with People Magazine today. But they are marketing it like you guys are writing and recording the record in 20 days. I was like, are you shitting me?
Uh-huh.
Like I already knew about the smoke and mirrors part about recording in 20 days. Like I was like, yeah, cool, whatever. But like we didn't sign anything that says we were gonna write it. Like, what are you gonna do? Like make my ideas stop coming? You know, like
Sure.
so I'm
Yeah.
not supposed to have any musical ideas before this happens. Like, what is wrong with you? And so that's how I found out that they were marketing it like that 10 days before we were going in. So then I'm having to like, you know, like I'm just biting my teeth, like, you know, just like wanting to just
Mm-hmm.
tackle someone as soon as I saw them. And so we got back on the phone with the interviewer and the people lady, she was like, yeah, we'll just skip that question. I was like, good call. We'll go to the tape for that one. She's like, yeah. So then
Yeah.
we moved on.
Why?
And I
Why?
was like, oh, cool.
Yeah. It sounds like a good. That's just to me. That's one of those like hilarious stories when creative people get put into the I guess the machine of corporate show business, like
Mm-hmm.
talking about like you weren't copied on this email because I have so many I have so many like work related things like that. It's just like that is not what I got interested in writing songs about was like, oh, were they copied on the email? I don't know if you ever saw the Beatles movie Yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
So like the record label scene where they're all at that conference desk,
Mm-hmm.
I just get like such serious like like douche chills watching that scene because I'm sure that happens in all over this country in record label offices, maybe less
Oh, yeah.
now, but well, well I'm sorry if I'm bringing up like stuff that you that's like old hat, but what in a way I kind of want to transition to this, and part of the reason that I think we're talking is because um given that you now and you went on to I think did you self-produce Collider?
Yes.
So given the through like the through line of Cartel's career into your career now doing like engineering and production work, I'm I think I want to think of the best way that I want to phrase this question. I mean, everything that you experience kind of builds to kind of where you're at now, I would imagine.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Um, all the little things like you kind of like I was training for the job that I didn't have yet, that I also didn't know that I was going to have.
Mm-hmm.
It's sort of just, yeah, I kind of caught the bug for recording stuff like very, very early on with, you know, just trying to get my own ideas like down. So I, one, didn't have to like play them every time I sat down, but also could like remember them, you know, a year later, 6 months later, whatever, and be like, oh yeah, cool, and listen to it and like the magic of recording and just kind of like knowing. I don't know. Yeah, I guess it's one of those see behind the curtain moments again, where you're just like, cool, like, I'm a fan of music. I listen to this recorded music. This is awesome. And then like, yeah, I'm learning how to play guitar. I can play guitar, and I can write songs and write on. Okay, hold on. How do they do this? Like I can't
Mm-hmm.
afford to go to a studio, but like I can get something to record. I have a computer, and then you kind of like learn like how much you don't know. Um,
Yeah.
and then for the rest of your career, you're sitting there like, all right, okay, okay, just always picking up some little tidbit from somebody, um, and then by next thing you're actually like twisting the knobs for your fourth studio album. And you're like, huh, okay, and I
Uh-huh.
still go back and listen to that, and I'm like, ooh, you kind of missed the vibe there. I'm sure 10 years from now, I'm going to do that with whatever I'm working on right now, like that.
Yeah,
Like,
no. Totally.
so close,
It's like, oh, I know so much more now. Why can't I want to go back, and then you end up like George Lucas, just like
Oh
eternally
yeah.
tweaking. Well, I wanted to, what I was curious about, because since lockdown, and I've been kind of trying to teach myself home recording, like with my little audio interface and like some, like I didn't know about amp sims. That's how long it's been in between, like when I've like was
Mm.
trying to record at home. Um, I wanted to ask you, how do you approach, like if a band comes in and was like they want like a really like classic like pop punk guitar tone, would you what would your idea be for going and capturing like specifically that kind of a guitar sound?
Depends on how good they are, honestly. Like, um, normally I default to getting someone to do, uh, a direct line as well as whatever's plugged into any amp,
Mm-hmm.
just because it's a lot easier to edit a direct signal than a distorted signal because you can see transients.
Right.
Um, and that way I can be like, all right, if you suck, I can like figure this out. Or if like this amp tone isn't doing it down at the, on the back end of things, then I can, um, change it with an amp sim, or I can reamp it when I have more time to sit down and like really dial in tone on an amp.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's a lot of options, which sometimes is a double-edged sword because you don't just sit there and commit right there and then.
Right.
Um, and I think a lot of magic happens when you just like sit there and commit. So like, um, yeah, first thing I do is basically just like assess like how good of a guitar player we're dealing with. Because if I don't have to take a direct and I can take that option away and can just commit right off the bat, boom. And if we have enough time to like do punches and stuff like that, then like whatever, cool, like let's just ride. But I mean, usually, dude, it comes down to like, you know, a good guitar
Mm-hmm.
that matches the player's style. Um, it's like Strats are like classic guitars to this day. Like I for some reason I just can't make a Strat sound good, but I can make a Telly sing. It's just like
Uh-huh.
it's a thing with like whatever your playing style is has to sort of match up with the guitar that you're using.
Gotcha.
And then from the guitar, then it's then you get to the amp and the pedals and sort of like all the expressiveness of everything. Like it's all got to go into like a consortium. There's no like standard like, yep, Les Paul through a Mesa Boogie, like
Mm-hmm.
that, because it's for me it's happened a bunch of different ways. Like um chat when we recorded the Newfound Glory like covers record stuff, like you know we had Chad's like standard Les Paul guitar tone was like a VHT on one side, and actually we just doubled it both with like a VHT, and it was just like super like heavy, distorted, like sort of like a Mesa-ish
Yeah.
distortion. And then I blended a 201 mic, which is kind of like a fancier 57 basically.
Mm-hmm.
um Kind of does a lot of the EQ things that you normally do to a 57. It just sort of is kind of baked into the mic. I
Yeah.
blended that with a 421, which is like 57 421 is the most classic guitar miking scenario of all time. So basically just that, and then blend to taste and put that down to tape. And like Chad's a hell of a guitar player, so it was like
Oh
very
yeah.
easy to just it sounded good. No matter what he did, I'm like, yeah, it sounds great. I don't have to do anything.
Hmm.
Um, but I mean, typically, I mean, Cartel records, that, it's Matchless, Orange, Marshall, uh, a lot of the self-titled was actually this guitar company called, or an amp company called Good Cell. It was from Atlanta. That actually used like old Hammond B3 transformers as the transformers in the amps. So like they had this like very like chimey but like warm sort of like output. Um, it is really cool. Like three knobs, turn it loud, that sort of thing. Um, yeah, that that did like something completely different than we'd ever done. Like than we did on Chroma. So it's like, yeah,
Hmm.
it's all sort of stuff, man.
Interesting. Yeah, when I think about the tone on the self-titled, like there's that kind of it kind of has like I think a much more kind of like warmer, mellower tone compared
Mhm.
to some of the tones on the self-titled. Um,
Yeah.
that's fascinating. I feel like punk nowadays, and I've thought about this when I was talking to Mark from Goalkeeper, which the production of the new EP, he let me hear some of it. I think is spectacular. So a plus
Thanks.
to you and everyone involved with that. But it seemed like once we got into like 2010, like Marshall and Mason, like that super cranked high gain distortion started to fall out of favor, and we started and punk started playing more overdrive and like orange amps. And yeah,
Mhm.
Matchless, I had forgotten about them. Forgotten about them. Those are amazing amps.
Mm, yeah, they're very tasty. I
Yeah.
like Matchless a lot.
And what are you playing nowadays for guitars and bass? Because you're the bassist in Cartel now.
It actually varies. I mean, like now we're getting a guy to come and play bass for us.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Whenever we play shows, which we were going to play several this year, and obviously that didn't happen. But
Right.
now I'm back to playing guitar. But yes, for the longest time, like when we were just four piece, I'm a bass player. Yeah. That setup was normally jazz bass, American Jazz Standard through SVT 810. Just typical run mill stuff. I actually had like the SVT got like really really heavy to just lug around. So I got like a rack mount Ashdown, the little hell, I think it's called like E500 or something like that. Um, and that thing, it's basically a solid state bass amp, but that thing was awesome. It sounded great, and for live, it's like whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Don't have to deal with tubes. That's tight.
Yeah.
Um, that had a nice little like crunchy bass tone to it that I really like. I always love a little bit of drive in the bass. It
Mm-hmm.
just sort of
Me
like
too.
cuts through a little bit more. It just has a thing. I feel like bass should sort of slightly, distort in some way. I don't know. It's just my taste, but um, yes. I mean, that was the bass thing. Guitar wise, man. Now it's like let's see. I've got a '73 Tele Deluxe. I've got like a custom. There's a custom guitar company in Austin called Moniker that I don't think exists anymore. I had them build me a guitar, and that thing's like really cool. Kind of looks like a Jaguar, but has Lindy Fralin split coil humbuckers in it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, or I should say coil. I can coil tap it. They're not split coils. Um, can do that. Then I've got like an SG that's been modded to hell. It's like a cheapo SG that I just like, yep, and put really killer pickups in it and change the electronics, and now it's gonna rip. I actually, that's one of my favorites. And then 2010 Les Paul traditional. Um, that it? Yeah, that's all my guitars. Yeah, that's it.
Awesome.
And then just a ton of pedals. That's kind of where I've kind of ventured in more into finding a very transparent amp.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then using pedals to sort of like tweak it from there, because it's sort of like the most customizable sort of tone landscape that you can get. Um, and I really favor that. But every now and then, just like screw it and just go straight in. So I still have one of those good cells, which is a 33 watt single channel thing. Uh, I have some somewhere in the 80s. It's a Marshall JCM 800, like 2204. That's basically like every Jimmy Eat World rock tone you've ever heard is essentially that amp. It's like, yep, that's what that sounds like, and it sounds great.
Yeah.
And then an orange rocker verb 30, just that's what we had for live, just because like sure. They're built, really solid and for touring, and they were based their artist rep was based out of Atlanta, so we got a pretty decent like artist discount and like hook up with them. So and their stuff sounds good too, like he says, like that more overdriven thing versus like straight up high gain. Yeah, big fan of that. I've never owned a Vox. I've always liked them, but never owned one for some reason. And I say all that to say, man, is it now when I'm like working on stuff at home and like doing demos or even like some production stuff, like every now and then when I'm like, you know what, this guitar just needs another layer in the chorus. Like I'll pop on a little amp sim and boom, it sounds killer and I didn't have to do a damn thing. It's
right.
Like they're really, really good now. Like almost like you can't really tell, to be honest.
Yeah, that's what I've found as well. John Fellman from Goldfinger has this like new like preset pack with like STL, and I was listening to those and I was like, that sounds like, because he's produced so many records that are a big part of my young adulthood, and I was like, oh, I can't tell that that's software. Like it blows my mind.
Exactly.
I have just a couple more things I want to ask, and I'll let you get back to your day. And thank you again for your time, Will. This has been as the same way like you when you were like, I'm on tour with Newfound Glory. The fact that I'm talking to you is like that same moment for me.
Oh man, that's cool. Thanks.
Well, first short question: are there plans for? Is there anything that you haven't made yet that you want to? And do you have plans to do another Cartel record? I listened to some of your side project,
Taurids.
That I really dug it. It kind of reminded me of this electronica group I like called Faded Paper Figures.
Ooh, I'll have to check that out.
You'll like them. They're very good. I like them a lot.
Cool. Yeah. I'm always looking for new stuff in that arena because it's like it's kind of the same stuff with Cartel, like in like that early 20s, like musical inspiration stuff. Is like, people were like, wait, you haven't listened to the Descendants? I'm like, nope. Like and they're like, oh, you have to listen to them. I listen to them, like, oh, this is great, like, but like, how are you writing this kind of music but you never heard this band? I don't know.
Right.
Like I heard enough. I heard Blink, Jimmy, and Newfound Glory, and then heard Saves the Day do two different, like overwhelmingly different records back to back, and I was like, oh, okay, we can do whatever we want,
yeah.
And that's sort of the same approach I've had with Taurids, where I'm just kind of like, yeah, man, like I friggin' love Radiohead, and that's all I really need to know. I didn't get into a bunch of other stuff because I'm like, I want to write music like that and like try to do more like musically adventurous things while still like making it palpable for people that don't necessarily appreciate musical adventurous things. Because I, for me, as much of like a music nerd, like music theory, like I know all this stuff, like that sometimes hearing stuff that's just like, very challenging to listen to isn't a lot of fun, even though like I respect it. Like, damn, you ripped, like, but like I'm overwhelmed. Like there's too much. Like,
yeah,
I need a good simple hook. Yeah, so I mean, I kind of wanted Taurus to kind of do that sort of thing where it's like kind of walk the line between like, when you really sit down and start, the music nerds could sit down and like, start to parse it out and be like, oh, that's really cool. Like he's doing some neat stuff there. But then, your average everyday person who doesn't know a thing about making music can be like, yeah, that's catchy. Like that's kind of where my tastes lie. Like I still want a good hook to hang on, but I want you
Mm-hmm.
to like impress me at the same time. From like my own personal like music taste.
Sure. Yeah.
So that would be something I'm continuing to try to experiment with and work on with Taurids. We're actually like, as soon as this damn ragweed season ends in Nashville,
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna start recording vocals for the second EP for Taurids. We already got through all the music on that. And then, yeah, I mean, like I said before, like, we had Cartel had Chain Fest planned. We had a couple more shows that we were trying to pull off and then sort of like see where it goes.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like enough time has passed with that we can approach it from an honest place. Yeah, after Collider, like I really love the Collider record. I think we did good stuff there, but we toured on it for like a year and a half or so,
Mm-hmm. It's a
and
great
then did the
record.
Chroma tour. Yeah, thanks, man. Yeah, I mean, I really appreciate what we did with that. Between Joseph and I, like really kind of like sitting down and knowing that there wasn't like another person, sort of like steer
Mm-hmm.
it back into place if we got, adrift.
Yeah.
Um, that was a lot of fun for both of us to really sit there and like, as bandmates, like become like more than that and just sort of like partners in crime of like really making something happen. Cause like I had all the technical chops of like recording and um he had this big wide like palette of sounds that he wanted to like draw from and like put stuff on that I guess we felt like in 3 albums, so we always kind of got talked out of doing some things.
Mm-hmm.
um and so we were able to kind of do more of them in Collider than we had done in the past, and that was a lot of fun to be able to go back and hear those little things. And it's kind of like, you know people like, if you're a chef, people only know if it tastes good. They don't know that you like might have over salted it just a little bit.
Exactly.
Like
Just pour some
um
sauce on it. They won't notice.
exactly. Like, so for me, like I can look back at certain things and I'm like, yeah, all right, yep, that worked just good enough. But like people are like, oh man, it's great, cool, thanks. Like so yeah, I mean, we didn't really have anything else to say after Collider. It was kind of like, well, like I honestly like hadn't written a Cartel song for like probably 5 or 6 years after that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then like kind of, doing a couple different things like Downright. I don't know if you're aware that I do the thing called that. Basically, it's downright.com. Write is in like writing words or whatever. But I have a profile on there, and essentially what it is people can like request for me to write them a song.
Oh, cool.
Obviously there's money exchanged and but it's basically custom. They can tell me they're like, I want a song for like my boyfriend or girlfriend or whoever. And it's his birthday or we have an anniversary coming up, which is typically what the two different subject matters are,
Mm-hmm.
obviously, because they're usually gifts. Nobody really buys it for themselves. It's a little, self-indulgent, I
Yeah.
think.
I want my
Um,
personal theme song.
Dude, I mean, that would be rad. Like, make me a theme song. Hell yes. Like
Yeah. Not
in the
even for.
style of what? Yeah,
Yeah. Not even for a
it's
podcast. Just to play when I walk in rooms.
exactly. Yeah, just whatever. Like, sure, man, that sounds cool. Like, I like good ideas like that are sort of fun. Like, one person wanted me to write like a happy birthday song, but it was like a 1 minute song, but like not really like saying happy birthday. And it just kind of ended up being this like almost like Boys to Men esque sort of like Boys to Men's version of Yesterday. That sort of like idea to start a song.
Mm-hmm.
But like then like about this girl Mackenzie but like a love song but a happy birthday song at the same time. Just like, okay, what? All right, cool. It was like a challenge. But then only be a minute long, that sort of thing. So
Mm-hmm.
anyway, I do stuff like that for people from time to time whenever it gets requested. And a lot of times it's like, obviously like I'm the guy in Cartel, like they're going to want it to sound like Cartel. So I've had to write a few songs that are like Cartel songs, but for these people, like not for me. And
Uh-huh.
it's really kind of like grease the wheel a little bit where I was like, oh, this is fun. Like it's no longer feels like derivative or like I already did that, like it's kind of gone long enough to forget all your bad habits that you used to be into,
Mm-hmm.
to So we're like, yeah, I played this chord before. It'd do a little different rhythm. It's fine. Like that might be close to this other idea I had, 10 years ago. Yeah, it's fine. We'll just, keep going. Like, and by the time I'm done with it, I'm like, oh, this could be a Cartel song. Like I'd change a couple lyrics because it wouldn't be so like pointed at a specific person that I don't know.
Right.
But, but yeah, this is cool. And like, so we've kind of like played around with the idea of like, throwing some new tunes out there, especially like, what the hell else are we going to do right now? Nobody's playing shows. We might as well like drop some new tunes. We got nothing else to do. So, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if some new Cartel stuff started popping up eventually. I can't say when, but eventually, just because why not?
Oh yeah. Well, exactly. And cause you're now at a place where it's you're not part of like that tour, record, release, album cycle where again it can feel it starts to feel like manufactured's not the right word, but again like you can do it kind of on your own terms in the way you want to do it, and it's exciting and it's not like a slog. Like I know so many like comedians who get on. I've seen lots of comedians who get on stage and appear to like not be enjoying themselves, and I'm just like, then why are you, then do something you enjoy, and then if you come back to enjoying this, then that's cool too. That's that's very exciting to hear, man. I look forward to whatever you put out next. But yes, I think you would really enjoy the band Faded Paper Figures, specifically their song Polaroid Solution. If you are into kind of like indie electronica and like that kind of stuff, I think you would really dig them.
That's dope.
And one more thing I wanted to ask you, just because it's a little self-indulgent. My favorite Cartel song of all time is Minstrel's Prayer from Chroma, just because I love that emphatic drum beat. I was wondering if you could tell me anything about the conception and recording of that song.
Yeah, it's so with Chroma. Let's see where to start with that. It's sort of like attacking it from a bunch of different angles. I wrote that when we were on our first tour, and I had GarageBand on my laptop, and I was just like recording my guitar into like it was just like a complete like jerry-rigged thing, like just getting audio into the computer somehow. I mean, this is like 2004.
Yeah.
2004. Yeah, it was after we did the EP, yeah, for sure. And I just had this little da 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 da, this little like guitar ditty, and I was like, oh, that's cool, like, but it needs to like have something there. Like, how am I going to make this a song? Because initially it sort of had like a a guitar kind of just big like like that's kind of my idea, but I wanted to put down that little thing first, and I put it down. I was like, and I hadn't like changed over the amp to be like distorted like a lead or something. I was like, oh, that's kind of pretty. What if it just did that? And then just sort of kind of worked through the idea from there. Because I always like to start, like if I'm writing a song or something, if I come up with like any sort of little thing to start, I'll plug in and start like getting the sound. Because I feel like the sound informs the writing. Because you kind of be like, oh, okay, this is the way it leans. Like I really want this dynamic to grow or descend or whatever. And so I basically started doing that, and it turned into like this ballad. And I was sort of just like, oh, well, like, how am I going to keep time with this? Like, what if I just had like some big ass, like epic drums, just do, do, do.
Yeah.
And I was listening to a lot of Pet Sounds at the time. And there's that song, oh God, what is it called? Oh gosh. Dude, I could sing the whole damn thing, but I can't think of the name of the song. Jeez, what is it called?
I'm not sure either.
I think it's called Waiting for the Day.
Okay.
But there's kind of this like boom, ba-dum, ba-dum, dum, ba-dum, 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 dum. And it's like a timpani or something, or it's like a floor tom, and it's like super like reverbed out. Like it sounds huge. Like it sounds like you're listening to like, something epic. It's like pop song. And so Sorry, you still there?
Yep.
My AirPod dropped. Okay, cool.
Oh no, I'm here.
So I threw these like fake drums down. I was like, okay, cool. And then like as the demo sort of kept progressing and people started hearing it, they're like, what are you gonna do with those drums? Like, I don't know, drum circle. And then, haha, it was a drum circle. So yeah, that's basically like how that, the whole thing got kind of hinged around just this like pretty acoustic guitar, just really dry, clean signal, and then just a shitload of drums being tracked at the same time. And we stacked it so we had everybody in the band. There was the 5 of us, and then Zach and Kenneth, who were the producers. The 2 of them were in there with us. So there's 7 people. We all had at least 1 floor tom. Pretty much everybody had 2. And then me and Kevin had kick drums. So we were like hitting kick drums at the same time. And then it was all room mics. Nothing was close mic'd. And it was in a giant room in Tree Sound Studios, which is called The Cave, which is basically just this massive, tall ceiling, like big ass room, like actually has like a rock climbing wall.
Oh, wow.
And then like the owner's kind of eccentric. So he made like stalactites or mites, I forget, whichever one comes from the ceiling.
Tights,
there we go. He like installed like fake, stalactites to make it look like it was a cave, and then they just called it The Cave. But it's huge, so that's where all those drum sounds. Like we stacked them, I think, like 3 or 4 times. So I mean, it was just like, by the end of the thing, it's like 50 different drums being hit at the same time. So it sounds like Braveheart or something. And that's pretty much, once we had that sound, we were like, we can kind of do whatever we want. It's going to sound good after this. And then Zach went in a closet for like half a day and recorded all the string parts. And when he brought that in, he was like, okay, I'm done with the strings. I'm like, cool. I just thought it was going to be just like, just patty string stuff. And then like I hear like, he does that like, it's like, dude, this sounds like it's a Disney movie. All of a sudden, like, this is awesome, but like in a good way.
Yeah, totally. It has that vibe.
Yeah, it just sort of like so many different moving parts kind of coming together at the end that just like kind of worked out to be great. Like nobody overthought anything. It was just like, yep, we'll just do it like this, and it ended up being awesome. Like that's pretty much what all of Chroma was. Like we just didn't give ourselves any opportunity to second guess or overthink anything, and there you go. It worked out.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's and that song and that album like still like hits really hard for me even after all these years. Will, I really appreciate you taking time to talk to me, man, and I look forward to seeing what you put out and release next, and I can't wait to see what other cool bands I can discover that you worked with.
Awesome. Yeah, no, it was a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, man. Thank you. There's so many delightful surprises in that conversation. I did not expect hardcore music to come up. What a amazing conversation with such an amazingly thoughtful and musically savvy person like Will Pugh. Thank you, Will, so much for chatting with me. If you guys are curious about Will's side project, I will have links in the description, and I will also have links so you can check out all of Cartel's studio albums. And thank you guys very much for being here and for taking a chance to listen to my show. If this is your first time listening to my podcast, I've got over 180 something episodes at this point. That are available wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Stitcher, Spotify. If you guys want to get a free month of Stitcher Premium and support the show as well, you can go to stitcher.com/premium and sign up with the promo code AWESOME in all caps. That is stitcher.com/premium, all caps, awesome, and you can get a free month off of your Stitcher Premium subscription and support the show as well. So And if anybody is curious, I also have a Patreon. You can go to patreon.com/awesomedisaster. Check out some of the exclusive, mostly music-related things that I post over there. And while I'm at it, I also want to give a shout-out to my supporter on Patreon at the awesome producer level, Mary Beth Mooney. Thank you so much for your support. And I'm just happy that you guys are here, and I'm happy in general right now. So in the thing that we talk about a lot on the show of like these moments between awesome and disaster in a world that in a year that has had a lot of disaster, I'm living in this moment of awesome, not just in this conversation, but in a boom in my personal life. So thank you guys for being here and for indulging me. Thank you to my guest Will Pugh again, and thank you to my lovely, as of the time of this recording, future wife, and as the time of this publishing, wife, Chelsea. Thank you. And thank you for every wonderful thing that you have given me. And I can't wait to see where our marriage goes from here. So thank you guys again for listening. And I will see you next time between awesome and disaster. Stay safe and wear a mask.